Remember those old Atari and Nintendo games we used to spend hours on? They felt like the height of technology back then.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Did you ever think, though, that those simple gaming devices could actually hold a clue to understanding global power in the 21st century?
It's not the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Nintendo, that's for sure.
Welcome to the deep dive, where we're going to explore just that
The fascinating story of Taiwan's rise as a technological superpower.
and how it all goes back to those video games.
I'll admit it might seem like a stretch at first, connecting Nintendo to geopolitics and semiconductors, but that's what makes these deep dives so fun.
Uncovering surprising connections.
Yeah, seeing how these seemingly random things can impact the whole world.
You've given us some incredible material for this. Stories about visionary leaders, insights into the global chip shortage, and even a bit of that Nintendo nostalgia.
They'll do like it.
We're going to unpack how Taiwan, this island nation with a history as intricate as a microchip itself, became such a force in tech.
And it's not just about technology either.
Definitely not.
We'll also be looking at the careful dance Taiwan has to do between the US and China.
Because its dominance in the semiconductor industry puts it right in the middle of that balancing act.
Exactly.
Before we get to all that, though, let's set the scene a bit. Imagine a place with lush mountains, vibrant cities, and a history shaped by centuries of influence from China and Japan. That's Taiwan, an island that's long been a crossroads of cultures and a focal point of political tension.
Right in the middle of it all.
After World War II, it became a refuge for Chinese nationalists fleeing the communist victory on the mainland, adding another layer to its already complex identity.
So that historical backdrop is really important to understanding where Taiwan is in the world today. It's that mix of cultural influences and political realities that has shaped its path, including its amazing economic transformation.
And a remarkable figure named K.T. Lee is a big part of that transformation. He's often called the father of Taiwan's economic miracle. And for good reason. He had this incredible vision to shift Taiwan from an agricultural economy to a technological powerhouse.
And he wasn't afraid to dream big.
It was a bold move, especially back then.
Yeah, it really was. What's interesting about KT Lee, though, is that he didn't just have a vision. He had a plan to actually make it happen.
He knew what needed to be done.
He understood that Taiwan's greatest strength was its people, especially the talented engineers who had gone abroad to find opportunity.
So many of these engineers, despite all their skills and ambitions, hit a glass ceiling in places like Silicon Valley. They had the talent, but not the chances to really use it.
KT Lee saw that untapped potential and came up with a strategy to bring these bright minds back to Taiwan.
That's clever.
He knew that if he could create the right environment, these engineers could drive his vision of a technological Taiwan.
And one of those engineers who came back was Min Woo.
Oh yeah, Minwoo, great
Yeah.
story.
He had a successful career in Silicon Valley, but he felt like something was missing. He wanted to give back to his homeland, be part of something bigger.
Yeah, it's a classic reverse brain drain story.
And it took a lot of courage.
To leave everything behind like that.
He packed his bags, left Silicon Valley, and went back to Taiwan to start his own company called Macronics.
Wow.
His goal was to build semiconductor factories, those places that make the chips that power the modern world.
Ambitious.
Minwoo's journey really shows the power of patriotism and the desire to contribute to something meaningful. But starting a business, especially one like building semiconductor factories, is hard.
Oh, absolutely. You need funding, you have to figure out complicated regulations, and most importantly, you need to break into the market somehow.
Minwoo needed a way to prove that his company could actually deliver.
He needed a big win.
And he found it in a surprising place. Nintendo.
Those video game consoles.
They needed lots and lots of chips. Minwoo saw a chance to not only get funding, but also to build his company's credibility.
Smart move.
But it wasn't that easy.
I bet there were obstacles.
There were trade tensions between the U.S. and Japan at the time. Minwoo had to navigate those political waters very carefully, using his knowledge and connections to get a deal that would help everyone involved.
So it was a real balancing act.
Absolutely.
This deal was huge for Minwoo and for Taiwan's semiconductor industry. It gave Macronics the money and the validation they needed to build their first factory in Taiwan. And it showed that Taiwanese companies could compete globally.
So that's a great start to this deep dive.
Yeah, and we're just getting started. Minwu's success was really just the start, though. Taiwan was building something much bigger.
Oh, yeah,
A whole environment to support this new industry.
like a foundation for the future.
Exactly. And a big part of that was Hsinchu Science Park. Imagine this huge campus with all these high-tech facilities, research labs just buzzing with activity, and tons of engineers and entrepreneurs all wanting to push the limits of what's possible. That's Hsinchu.
Sounds impressive.
It was Taiwan's own Silicon Valley.
Wow. So it was more than just buildings and equipment, though.
Right. Hsinchu was all about getting and keeping the best people. They had big tax breaks, made regulations easier, and created a really collaborative atmosphere, a place where ideas could grow and companies could get big fast.
So it was designed to be really attractive to those engineers coming back from overseas.
Absolutely. And did it work? You bet it did. Hsinchu became a center of activity. It wasn't just companies like Macronix. There were tons of startups, too, all trying to get in on the semiconductor boom.
I bet.
It was a cycle. More companies came, they brought in more talent, and that just led to more innovation.
So it wasn't just about bringing people back. It was about giving them a place to really succeed and contribute.
Exactly. And this whole environment, along with government investment and a skilled workforce, helped Taiwan become a leader in the semiconductor industry. By the 21st century, they were the top producer of those advanced chips, the ones that power almost everything we use today.
You know, it's crazy. When we were playing those Nintendo games, who would have thought about the tiny chips making it all work? And now those chips are in everything. Phones, laptops, cars, medical devices. It's amazing how much we rely on them.
Yeah, it's a great example of how something so small can have a huge impact on the world. And all this has earned Taiwan a nickname,
What's that?
the Silicon Shield.
Silicon Shield. That sounds serious.
Well, it's because Taiwan's semiconductor industry is so strategically important. It's not just about the economy, it's about national security and global influence.
I can see that. But, like we said before, it's not all smooth sailing for Taiwan. They're always trying to keep things balanced between the U.S. and China. Both countries need those chips from Taiwan. That must create some tension. What are the concerns from both sides?
Oh, it's definitely complicated. The U.S. sees Taiwan as a really important ally, sort of a counterbalance to China's influence. They're worried about China maybe trying to disrupt the flow of semiconductors, which would hurt all kinds of industries, even their own. You remember that chip shortage a while back? That was a wake-up call for a lot of countries. Showed them how vulnerable they are if the supply chain gets messed up.
So the U.S. wants to make sure they can get those chips. And I imagine China has its own ideas about Taiwan.
Of course. China believes Taiwan is a part of their territory that will eventually be reunited with the mainland.
I see.
And they've said they're willing to use force if they have to.
Wow.
Having control of Taiwan's chip production would be a big win for them. It'd be like having the most valuable piece on the chessboard.
So we have this tiny island that makes these essential things for practically every gadget we use, stuck in a tug-of-war between two superpowers. It sounds kind of scary, like what could happen?
It's tricky. One possibility is that things stay kind of like they are now.
A tense peace.
Yeah, kind of. Where Taiwan keeps its independence but manages its relationships with both the U.S. and China really carefully while still being a major player in the chip industry.
So like a delicate balancing act.
Exactly. It would take some serious diplomacy and economic maneuvering, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, like walking a tightrope. One wrong step and it all goes wrong. What are some other possibilities?
Another one, and this is more worrying, is that things escalate and we see some kind of military action.
Oh, no.
China could try to take Taiwan by force.
Which could lead to a response from the U.S.
And its allies.
A conflict like that would be terrible, not just for Taiwan, but for everyone.
Absolutely.
Just the economic problems alone would be huge. Remember that chip shortage? Imagine that, but way worse.
It doesn't bear thinking about. But let's not go there. There's a third possibility, one where things get resolved more peacefully, even though it would still be complicated.
What do you mean?
China and Taiwan could figure out a way to coexist. Maybe through some kind of economic or political partnership. It would mean both sides giving up something and being willing to compromise.
Yeah.
But it could lead to a better future for everyone involved.
It's a long shot, but better than war for sure. What about the chips themselves and all this? Are they just something to bargain with, or is there more to it?
That's a great point. Taiwan being so good at making chips is both a good and bad thing in all this.
How so?
Well, it gives them some power. If there was a conflict, China might hesitate to mess with chip production too much because it would hurt them too, and the whole world.
So the chips are like a shield in a way.
Yeah, you could say that. But China could also see controlling Taiwan's chips as a strategic advantage that would help them reach their goals.
So it's a tough situation all around.
It really is.
This is all so interesting, but it makes you think. We just use our technology every day. We don't think about all the history and politics and economics behind it.
It really shows that things that seem totally separate can actually be connected in ways we don't realize.
Like video games and global politics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's important to understand these connections and really dig into the things that shape our world.
That's what we try to do here.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has given us a lot to think about. From Taiwan's past and its rise in the chip industry to its delicate position between the U.S. and China, we've uncovered a really important story that helps us understand the world today.
And it's not over yet. The choices made in the next few years will shape things globally, not just technology, but economies and relationships between countries.
It's something we'll all be watching. And if you found this deep dive interesting, we have more explorations into these fascinating topics.
There's always something new to learn.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.